But look, let's move on, because you will recall that ACMA found earlier this month that the ABC was in breach of privacy provisions in the Code of Practice. The Australian Communications and Media Authority has found the Australian Broadcasting Corporation breached the privacy requirements in the ABC Code of Practice by broadcasting an identifiable person's profile in a news report about dating app scams. The NewsHour segment, which was broadcast in May 2021, included footage of a screen scrolling through a dating app showing the profile of a person, including an image of a face, age, and first name. Now, that's a pretty bad blunder, and it prompted the ACMA Chair Nerida O'Loughlin to release a statement saying there was no justifiable reason to identify the person, and the ABC did not undertake adequate measures to ensure their privacy. And just a week after that statement was issued, the ABC was in hot water again with the regulator, this time for an accuracy breach. During 3 radio broadcasts in April last year, the ABC alleged that Vic Forests had put Melbourne's drinking water at risk through logging breaches. Great story for the ABC, evil loggers damaging your water supply. The only problem is it wasn't true. The act of logging was illegal, but in typical ABC fashion, it exaggerated the impact on drinking water. When we assessed the factual material presented in the ABC News report, we found they did not meet the standards expected of it as a public broadcaster, Ms O'Loughlin said. The assertion that the OCR had found significant risk to Melbourne's drinking supply exaggerated the impact and seriousness of the breaches found by the OCR. This could have raised considerable concerns for the ABC's audiences about such a critical issue as water supply. The ABC attributed a perspective to the OCR that was not present in their published findings, and in this regard, let down its audience. Now, that is a scathing comment from the regulator chair. And how does the ABC respond to this? You would not believe it. They released a statement glossing over the fear-mongering error they published. The OCR found that illegal logging had put the state's waterway health at a, quote, increased risk. It also reported allegations by ANU researchers that these breaches were systemic, widespread, and a threat to Melbourne's water supply. Some of those stories reported the OCR found that the illegal breaches were a threat to Melbourne's water supply. In a review, the ACMA has found that this misrepresented the OCR's findings. Well, I love that a damning code breach is characterised as a review in a tiny sentence at the back of a long-winded statement. How many people watched the original broadcast and were too scared to drink water all the way back in May last year? I bet it was a lot more than the number of people who read that pathetic corporate speak response more than a year later. Kel, mistakes happen. My issue with this story, and I think it's really interesting, and it shows how the ABC's communication team works to control the narrative if a reporter happens to make a mistake. So a mistake's been made, but you're waiting more than a year for it to be rectified, and it pertains to whether it's safe to drink water. That's absurd to me.
Yes, of course it is. And the ABC keeps pretending they're very good at providing a service to local listeners and local viewers, so we can tell you what's happening in your area. Yes, it is safe to drink the water, except we're not going to tell you that because we said the opposite just a little while ago. And this is where Sophie's point is so relevant. There's 4,500 staff. Getting things right should not be hard. When I was at the ABC, a colleague of mine actually set up their first fact-checking unit and started doing things on ABC Online, and then later they decided they didn't have enough money and shut down the fact-checking unit. At some point, they've got to say, we are responsible. This is the problem. They are not taking proper responsibility for what they've done. It is not adult. Jordan Peterson's big line, if you look at his book, is take responsibility, grow up and take responsibility. ABC, grow up, take responsibility.
Sophie, I think it's fairly fair to say that the ABC is very good at spinning an error, spinning a crisis. What do you make of the way that these communication teams run cover when all that needs to happen is very quickly after you've made the mistake, in a case where you're telling people that water is not safe to drink, all that needs to happen is, we were wrong, you can actually safely drink water, don't be afraid.
Well, Jack, what generally happens with these complaints is the complainant goes to the broadcaster first, makes a complaint, and generally, if they're not satisfied, it then moves to the media regulator. You don't just go to the media regulator straight away. So the fact that the media regulator is getting multiple issues with the ABC is a problem in itself. But what they seem very good at the ABC is rather than saying, yes, we made an error, yes, we stuffed up, and yes, we're sorry, which is fine. It happens to journalists all the time, unfortunately. But what they're very good at doing is saying, oh, it was kind of this sort of made it okay, and it's not really an issue. And then they put all this gobbledygook in, and they don't actually own up to the error that's made initially. So this is a spin machine at its finest. But I think it's confusing to the reader who would read that complaint and be trying to work out what's right and wrong here. If they've made a mistake, admit it, deal with it, and move on, because that's what happens in journalism, unfortunately. But they're very good at taking a long time to deal with complaints and then shifting blame when there is an issue at the end of this.
Well said, Sophie.